The fifth honoree has more than 2 decades of experience in transportation in both the public and private sector. As the general manager of the Los Angeles Department of Transportation and the president of the National Association of City Transportation Officials, she's been instrumental in instituting Los Angeles's Great Streets Initiative, an effort to make LA's streets more walkable, safe, and vibrant fixtures of the Los Angeles community. With a canny understanding of history and how transportation emerged to benefit certain segments of society, this honoree has worked tirelessly to make more equitable transportation systems for all. This Momentum Award winner is Seleta Reynolds. Accepting the award on her behalf is Nora Frost from the Los Angeles Department of Transportation.
Hi, good evening. I'm Nora Frost, and I am accepting here on behalf of Seleta Reynolds. She's very humbled and honored, and sorry she couldn't be here this evening. But she's really instituted in our department and in our city that change starts from the inside out. Seleta's focus at LADOT is to create access to safe and affordable transportation choices that treat everyone with dignity and support vibrant, inclusive communities. That focus starts internally with equity. We've hired, under her leadership, a better way to reflect more than the 4 million people that we serve daily. 63% of our executive leadership are women, and 63% of our executive team are people of color. This year, we've quadrupled our effort to bring in female engineers to be hired. Los Angeles is the creative capital of the world, and we are creators. LADOT has created cutting-edge digital tools to govern new transportation technology in a way that better reflects and helps everybody. We've created a digital data specification to manage scooters, to help keep people safe, and to make sure that all communities have access to micromobility options. We created the country's largest electric vehicle car-sharing program to neighborhoods where private industry would not otherwise serve. And we created a program that gets students from kindergarten to college for free to school on our city buses. So on behalf of Seleta Reynolds, LADOT, and the 4 million Angelinos that we serve, thank you for cheering us on as we continue to disrupt transportation inequities through engagement and innovation.
Thank you. And we have a video that describes, in particular, I think, part of Seleta's award is her leadership in dealing with the data. So I'll leave it at that and let of rings a bell here in Atlanta, huh? We could use some of that. All right, I am going to now switch. Seleta is online. She is in Singapore for a conference, but she is going to join us live. So let me turn you around, give you a chance to see. Here's the audience. Hi, wave.
Hi, everyone.
But I'm afraid you're only going to hear me for the questions. So we just watched the video, and I explained a little bit. We have a lot of scooters here in Atlanta. We really feel the questions that you're asking have a lot of information that we're shares a lot of, comes from the same concerns. Tell us what the world really needs to know about the Open Mobility Foundation and why mobility data specifications are so important.
So first of all, thank you so much for letting me participate remotely. I wish I could be there. This is a great honor, and I really appreciate it. Very exciting. I'm totally mortified that I'm full screen behind you, and I'm glad that I can't see that here at 6 in the morning in Singapore in the airport lounge. To just share a little bit about what we've been doing. And I'll just say first, when we started doing the work, it was really focused on how can we rebalance the relationship between public and private as transportation gets disrupted by technology companies. Because what was happening is that there was great innovation that was happening on the public realm, but it was happening sort of independently of the city and independently of cities, which meant that it didn't always come into cities in a way that reflected our policy goals and outcomes. So when we created the mobility data specification, it was never really about the data. It was about creating a new open source tool that cities could use to start to interact with the businesses that were operating on the public right-of-way. And when we launched it in Los Angeles, it very quickly became sort of a global phenomenon and a real milestone for cities. About opportunity to create an open source foundation governed by the entities that own and regulate the public realm. And so we created something that didn't exist. The Open Mobility Foundation has a board comprised exclusively of public sector entities, but it also has a technology council comprised of private sector partners that want to come together and really solve real problems because no single sector, public, private, academic, nonprofit, is going to solve the tremendous challenges that we face, whether it's around public health or climate or correcting inequities, all by ourselves. And we're also never going to solve those problems if we keep doing things the way that we've done them to date. So OMF is really about trying to blow up those old roles, ask different questions, and solve real problems.
Fantastic. Can you give an example of how Los Angeles is using this data to promote equity?
So what was really interesting is that we created an incentive program that we thought was going to be really effective in getting scooter companies to deploy in low-income neighborhoods. And what we found in looking at the data is that there was really we could watch in real time companies trying to experiment with different deployments. And in particular, in the San Fernando Valley, what we saw early on is that there was really only one company that was deploying there, and that company wasn't getting as many rides per vehicle per day. We have what's called a dynamic cap, which means that if you get a high number of rides per vehicle per day, we increase the number of scooters that you can have on the road. So that sort of prompted us to go back and look at our policy and redesign our policies to try and come up with different incentives to get more scooters in those neighborhoods, and also to create different requirements for those companies to proactively work with community-based organizations and neighborhoods to figure out how could they create and design a program that would actually get use in those neighborhoods. And then we're also thinking about how we can use our own funds to invest in service deployment in those neighborhoods. And all of that really rises out of being able to see the data and being able to see and then that is able to facilitate a fact-based conversation with a private company.
Great. So, but does this suddenly now put the city in the business of software? I mean, the city's got a lot on its plate as it is. How did you get this done?
Magic and a lot of hopes and dreams. No, and here's a couple things. First of all, cities are already, especially transportation departments, are already steeped in information and data. And many of us actually already use complex software to both manage our integrated traffic signal systems or our dynamic parking meters, or even to do things like analyze projects that we want to put into the world. And so transportation departments are actually comfortable using large amounts of data and using software, but this requires us to kind of shift that a little bit, to think differently about the skill sets that we need inside transportation departments, because whether we like it or not, we are now in the product business and we are in the software business because these private companies are the ones delivering transportation in our cities. And so I made it a point to start gathering together and building a coalition of advisors and really great people inside and outside the department, and actually had to go to bat with the personnel department to create a new classification in the civil service system so that we could actually start to hire the transportation engineers of tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So I don't know that it's true, but I read that when some of this data was made public, within like 5 minutes, someone was able to figure out what hotel Matthew McConaughey was staying at because of where his rides from between the hotel and a movie set. Which just sort of raises that question of, what do you say about folks who are worried about the privacy concerns of now every single trip being tracked, and what that might be put to ends that we wouldn't be so happy about?
Yeah. So I think you might be thinking about a story from New York City when the Taxi and Limousine Commission published some of its taxi data. And actually that data was used in combination with a bunch of other sources, including photos from People magazine, to try and triangulate a best guess about people traveling, where people were traveling, and particularly maybe famous people. I think your average Angelina doesn't have their picture in People magazine, and so we consider the risk of that happening pretty low, but we still take it very seriously. So we actually have not yet made any of that scooter data public. We've adopted privacy principles that have really strict rules in place, particularly about never being able to monetize the data in any way, shape, or form. And second, making it so that the data is not available through a Public Records Act request. It's designated at the same level of sensitivity of other kinds of data that we collect that are very sensitive. For example, the Department of Transportation adjudicates parking tickets. So if you've ever been to Los Angeles and got a parking ticket, I'm sorry, but I have vehicle identification numbers and credit card numbers. All of that is incredibly sensitive. We've also made it so that no law enforcement can access the data without a legal process. So these are really important questions. But when it comes to the data that we're collecting about 6 different data points, and none of it is about the human on the scooter. It's just about the vehicle itself, because that's what I'm tasked with regulating, the business that operates the fleet. The companies themselves have a much longer list of data, and they don't actually have the same kinds of privacy principles in place. So I would really love to reset the conversation to talk about a universal right to move through a city anonymously as an individual. If that's something we care about and we want to preserve, then we ought to all be coming together and setting up one set of rules that we're all willing to work by, public or private. Yeah. So we have about 80 cities worldwide that are using MDS right now, and that number grows every day. And then so we launched with about 12 cities on the board of the OMF, and then in just a couple of months since we've launched, we've doubled that. And we've been able to invite in international members like Dublin and Bogota. So it's not just the U.S. or even North America anymore. Now we're part of a really great sort of rich global conversation.
Thank you so much, Seleta, and good luck with your flight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.